Two people are dead and another is in custody after a shooting at a Kroger grocery store outside of Louisville, Kentucky.
I walked over and I said, "Look, I'm an EMT. Let me try to help this lady." And I walked out and I was getting ready to start CPR on her, and I looked at her and she was gone. I knew there was nothing I could do.
Police say the suspect opened fire inside the store, killing one man, and then shot the female victim multiple times in the parking lot. They say an armed bystander exchanged gunfire with him before he fled the scene. The suspect was taken into custody shortly after that, but officials say have not released the name or information about a possible motive.
I'm saddened. I mean, we've had over 100 homicides that have happened in our city, which is something that hasn't happened in a very long time. And we consider ourselves one of the safest cities in America. But when you have tragedy like this, certainly it puts a damper on that, and for anyone who's celebrating the day. But it is a day to be thankful, and we're thankful that more people didn't get hurt in this situation.
None of these killings have been solved. As a matter of fact, 29 of this year's 75 homicides have not been solved. We need help to solve these cases. We owe it to the victims' families to make arrests, to hold someone accountable for the terrible loss that they've suffered.
And that Chief Conrad said late this afternoon is part of the problem, Rick Vicky, people unwilling to provide information to police. He urged the public, you've heard this time and time again, if you see something, say something. And in light of this most recent wave of violence, the chief spent a great deal of time talking about gangs. He acknowledged the Metro does have gangs, but stopped short of saying these most recent deadly shootings, Wednesday's shooting at Clay and Jacob Streets and Thursday's shooting on South Hancock Street, were gang related. Meanwhile, people living in those areas, separated by, as you know, just a few blocks, are saying the two shootings are related and that Thursday's was possibly an act of retaliation. Homicide detectives say at this point they're not ruling anything out.
From our point of view, when we speak about it, we speak in terms of what we could prove in a courtroom. And at this point, we couldn't do that. So, we're still investigating and it's still open.
Well over 100 people that have been murdered and hundreds that have been shot. And a lot of that is due to gang activity.
Louisville Metro Councilman David James's district includes much of the Victory Park Crips territory, so he welcomed yesterday's arrests of 5 members and associates of the gang, and he wants to see more arrests.
We're only addressing one gang in this situation yesterday, and as you know, we have many gangs here in Louisville that have caused a lot of havoc.
Officials with the multi-agency task force that led the investigation say there is more to come, and they're going to prosecute the cases in federal court. Community activist Luther Brown supports that approach because it's harder for inmates to get parole in the federal prison system.
Doing 85% of your time when a gun is in a crime or what they're doing right now is a positive message. But it also lets us know that we can be protected, that our neighborhoods are going to start getting safe the more that they're enforcing these new laws.
But others are more focused on how to keep children from joining gangs in the first place.
Time to begin looking at what sends a child off in the wrong direction is when they're born. We've got to begin looking at how do we stabilize families? How do we stabilize neighborhoods? How do we promote the positive as opposed to promoting the negative?
James says the city has many such programs, including some aimed at current gang members.
It's hard to get them to appreciate that opportunity if there's not a stick, all right? So we're offering the carrot, but you got to have a stick.
Charges against a woman accused of murdering another woman in front of dozens of police officers and bystanders.
At the same time, that victim is laid to rest. WLKY Steve Tellier is live in the newsroom with new developments in Thursday's high-profile shooting. Steve?
Rick and Vicky, 24-year-old Shatara Goldsmith is still recovering at the hospital after being shot by police, but she has been arrested for murder. It's just another piece of what police are calling an incredibly complex and deadly puzzle. A murder suspect's arrest and a murder victim's funeral, both stemming from the same shocking scene. Police now say those first few shots were fired by 24-year-old Shatara Goldsmith last Thursday at 32nd and Greenwood. She's charged with murdering 24-year-old Makiba Lee in the second of twin fatal shootings that claimed 3 lives in 90 minutes. But homicide detectives say the violence defies easy explanations.
It's very far-reaching, very complex, so it's just difficult at this point to pinpoint one thing.
Here's what we do know. During the first shooting, 24-year-old Tyson Mims and 22-year-old Craig Bland Jr. were killed and 2 other men were injured. Sources tell WLKY Mims and Bland had an ongoing dispute that dated back several years. Then, 90 minutes after their deaths, police say Goldsmith, who was pregnant with Bland's child, murdered Lee, who had a 1-year-old child with Mims. Still, police are shying away from calling this a domestic incident.
What it was a very heinous situation that took place, whether it was domestic or what have you, to do that in broad daylight and to do it in front of a number of police officers is totally just shocking.
And while police were briefing the media on the case, dozens of friends and family members were laying their loved one to rest.
She loved everybody. She was the friendliest person you could ever meet. She was just a very loved person.
And because of the possibility of further retaliation, a large police presence guarded Lee's funeral, something friends say should not even be necessary.
It's so sad out here, the way that everything's going on. It needs to stop.
And we owe it not only to the victims in this situation, but also to that neighborhood and to this community to be able to get to the bottom of it.
Now, that murder suspect, Shatara Goldsmith, does have a limited criminal history. It includes convictions for disorderly conduct and criminal mischief, and an arrest for an incident in 2006 when police say Goldsmith threatened another woman with a box cutter. Once she fully recovers from her injuries at the hospital, she will be booked into jail. I'm Steve Tellier, WLKY News.
All right, thank you, Steve. Now, the 2 other men injured in Thursday's shootings are also still recovering at the hospital. Police expect them to survive, but will not comment on whether they will eventually face any charges. They're still asking anyone with information on what happened to call their anonymous tip line. That's 574
Now at noon,
LMPD.
a man is behind bars charged with shooting a man to death at the Beecher Terrace housing complex. WLKY's Erica Coghill joins us live at Metro Police headquarters to tell us how police made the arrest. Erica?
Yeah, Monica, that man's now being held in Metro Corrections on a $1 million bond, and this morning he made his very first court appearance. 31-year-old James Jones faces charges of murder, convicted felon in possession of a firearm, and wanton endangerment first degree. A police report outlines he was arrested last night around 8 o'clock after several witnesses identified him as the shooter in 34-year-old John Purcell's death. He was gunned down Wednesday in the entrance of an apartment at Beecher Terrace, and police say Jones made statements to detectives about his involvement in Purcell's murder, and today in court he remained very quiet, just shaking his head to respond.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. We'll see you back on the 25th.
He's a convicted felon with a criminal history that dates back to 1981. Those convicted charges include offenses involving stolen property, drug charges, trespassing, violating probation, and being a convicted felon in possession of a handgun. And again, he is expected back in court on the 25th. And later today, the victim's mother is going to talk with us on camera just about the arrest that's made in light of her son's murder. Reporting live outside of Metro Corrections, I'm Erica Coghill, WLKY.
It bothers me real bad. I mean, it's bothered me so much I even wrote the president.
Jeffrey Kemp lives in Park Duval. Like many of his neighbors, he says incidents like this weekend's triple murder keep him up at night.
It is something that is real and very personal to me. I live 3 blocks away from here in Park Duval.
Metro Councilwoman Jessica Green doesn't live far from the crime scene either. She says the growing violence in her district is a problem she's been working to fix.
So it's devastating to learn that such a heinous act of crime happened so close to home.
On Saturday, 3 men were found dead inside this home on Lewis Coleman Drive. One of them has been identified as Michael Bass, who lived at the home. The other 2, John Bailey and Larry Thomas, were from Baltimore. All 3 victims were in their 40s, and all 3 were shot to death.
We know that a group of people met at that residence Saturday night.
Homicide detective Todd Kessinger says officers interviewed several people who led them to William Mason Jr. Mason has a long criminal history, much of it related to drugs. He was out on parole after serving 3 years of a 7-year prison sentence. While the neighborhood is frustrated with gun violence, detectives say this particular incident isn't necessarily something they could have prevented.
The police can only do so much. I mean, this is a murder that happened inside of a house behind closed doors at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's nothing the police can do to prevent a murder like that.
Detectives say the victims all knew each other. They're not yet discussing a motive, but many community leaders hope more people in the neighborhood will gain the courage to speak up.
We can continue to be held hostage by the criminal element, or we can speak up, we can speak out, we can talk about what we see, what we hear.
Preventing crime before it happens. It sounds like the plot of a TV crime drama, but it's exactly what Louisville police are trying to do as we speak. Tonight, WLKY rode along with the city's first ever full-time violent crime prevention unit to get a first-hand look at their mission and their message. WLKY's Steve Tellier is live in the newsroom with his exclusive story. Steve?
Vicki, we spent about 2 hours with the brand new Viper unit. Their goal is to prevent violence, and tonight they showed us how they plan to do that. It's 7 p.m., and these two detectives have just started their shift as part of LMPD's Viper unit. They cruise down Broadway, Madison, 26th, and Dixie Highway in an unmarked car looking for anything suspicious. But their main focus is on preventing violent crime.
This is truly community policing at its finest.
The Viper unit just started up last week. It stands for Violent Incident Prevention, Enforcement, and Response, and its mission is to clean up Louisville's most crime-ridden areas.
People are sick and tired of being scared of not being able to sit on their own porch.
Wednesday night began with 2 routine traffic stops, one at Broadway and Hodge, the other at 22nd and Hale. The detectives we patrolled with are 2 of the department's best, hand-picked along with 30 others to comprise the new unit, which uses crime data and analysis to target the areas most prone to violence and the people most likely to commit it.
Diffuse the problems, get the guns, find out from the community who the bad guys are, identify the bad guys, and put them in prison.
Though the unit has only been operational for 7 days, it's already taken 20 guns off the streets, several of them stolen, and 1 assault rifle. As a result, officers have arrested 6 convicted felons in possession of those firearms. 90 minutes into this shift, a 3rd traffic stop leads to the arrest of a suspect wanted on a warrant, but of the non-violent variety. He didn't have any firearms on him, and that's exactly the way LMPD wants to keep it.
This is where we need to be, and violent crime touches so many people that we need to be there.
The commander of that Viper unit says his goal is to decrease violent crime in those target areas by 10%. And he says that previous summertime task forces have proven they can do just that. I'm Steve Tellier, WLKY News.